When my twin stole my identity and destroyed my credit, I planned a revenge that took 3 years. I'm sitting in a glass-walled conference room at our childhood bank, watching my twin brother's face drain of color as the fraud investigator slides a thick manila folder across the table. The air smells like burnt coffee and printer toner, and my knee won't stop bouncing under the table. My brother, Adam, smooths his tie with shaky fingers and tries to laugh, but it comes out thin and wheezy. The investigator taps the folder with a pen. "So," she says, looking from him to me, "maybe you can help me understand why your sister's social security number is on every single one of these applications, but her signature isn't." I don't look at him right away. I pretend to be focused on the little swirl of chipped laminate at the edge of the table, the way the fluorescent lights flicker slightly overhead. Inside, my pulse is hammering loud enough that I'm sure someone can hear it. Adam's chair creaks as he shifts toward me, like I'm still the kid he can nudge into backing him up. He says, using the nickname he hasn't used in years, "Tell them this is just a mix-up. Tell them we agreed." His voice cracks on the last word. My fingers tighten around the styrofoam cup of stale coffee in front of me until it warps under my grip. I finally look up and meet his eyes. For the first time in 3 years, I let him see that I am not on his side. It didn't start here, obviously. It started 3 years earlier with a declined card at the grocery store and a cashier who looked at me like I was trying to scam my way into free cheese. It was a Tuesday night, the worst kind of Tuesday, dark, rainy, and somehow both too early and too late. I just finished a 10-hour shift at the hospital where I work as a nurse, my scrub stiff with dried sanitizer and my brain running on fumes. I had a basket with the basics: pasta, sauce, frozen veggies, a cheap bottle of wine I definitely felt I'd earned. When I tapped my card, the little machine beeped and flashed declined in all caps like it was screaming at me. "Try it again," I said, cheeks already heating. I knew there was enough for groceries. Rent had just come out, but I kept a buffer. I'm that person, the one who triple-checks her budget, color-codes her spreadsheets, keeps cash tucked in a jar behind the flour just in case. The cashier sighed in that way that says this is not their problem. "Do you have another card?" I tried again, hands sweating. Declined. Then I tried my credit card. Declined. The line behind me was growing. I could feel the eyes on my back. A guy 2 people behind me exhaled loudly like I was doing this on purpose to ruin his evening. I don't understand," I muttered, and ended up paying with the $30 emergency cash in my wallet, leaving half my basket behind. I walked home in the drizzle, plastic bag cutting into my palm, my mind racing with possibilities. Had my rent check bounced? Did I miscalculate something? Did student loans finally eat through my soul and my bank account at the same time? By the time I got to my tiny apartment, my hair was plastered to my forehead and the bottom of my scrub pants were damp up to mid-calf. I did what any anxious millennial does. I opened my laptop and checked my accounts. The bank website took longer than usual to load, like it knew it was about to ruin my night and wanted to drag it out. When it finally showed my balance, my stomach lurched. I should have had around $1,200 after rent. Instead, I had $47.32. I clicked on my credit card. Maxed out. Another card I barely used, one I kept for emergencies, was over the limit with late fees. I started scrolling through the transactions. Furniture store in a suburb I'd never been to. Electronics. A used car dealership. 3 different payday advance debits, each a few $100s. A bunch of minimum payments to cards I didn't even recognize. At first, I genuinely thought there had to be some mistake. Maybe my account had been linked with someone else's. Maybe there was some system glitch. I was halfway through dialing the bank when I saw a transaction description that made my blood run cold. Online application, personal loan, $15,000, approved. Next to it, a note, signed, Emily Carter. That's my name. It's also, unfortunately, my twin brother's favorite tool. Adam and I are fraternal twins. People always picture identical clones, but we've never looked alike. He's taller, broader, dark hair, loud laugh that fills a room. I'm on the shorter side, brown hair always in some messy bun, the one who blended into the background. Growing up, our parents loved the twin thing in a way that was cute when we were 5 and deeply irritating by the time we were 15. They called us the Carters, like we were some package deal that came with their house. The thing is, Adam always had issues with boundaries. If there was a line, he saw it as a suggestion. He'd borrow my stuff and return it broken, if at all. He'd charm teachers into extending deadlines and talk his way out of consequences my ass would have been grounded for. When we were 16, he got caught with weed in his car. He cried in front of our parents, said it was his friends and he didn't know, and somehow I ended up the one lectured about who I associate with, even though I wasn't even there. Still, I loved him. That's what messes with my head even now. He was my first friend, my late-night confidant, the person who knew all my embarrassing stories because he was in half of them. When I got into nursing school and he dropped out of community college after one semester, I drove him home and bought him ice cream and said, "You'll figure it out. You always land on your feet." Yeah, turns out it's easier to land on your feet when you're standing on someone else's shoulders. The night my accounts imploded, I stayed on the phone with the bank for 2 hours. The woman I spoke to did her best. I could hear the sympathy in her voice. "There are notes on my file," she said, "about recent applications." She read out addresses I'd never lived at, phone numbers that weren't mine. She said the words identity theft, and I felt like I'd been punched. "Can you tell who did it?" I asked, even though some part of me already knew. "We can't say for sure," she said carefully. "But I can tell you the applications use your full name, date of birth, and social security number. Do you know anyone who might have access to that?" I flashed back to Adam sitting at our parents' kitchen table, filling out job applications, asking, "Hey, what's your social again? I'm doing this health insurance thing and need the family info." I remembered being half asleep on the couch, rattling it off because I trusted him more than I trusted myself not to forget it. My stomach turned. I need to make some calls," I told the bank rep. I called my parents first. Mom answered, breathless, like she'd run to get the phone. "Emmy, everything okay? Someone's been using my name to open accounts," I said, voice weirdly flat. "Loans, cards, a car." Silence. Then, too quickly, "Well, that sounds like a bank problem, doesn't it?" "Mom," I said, "they use my social. My info. Who has that?" Another tiny pause. "We keep all that in the filing cabinet," she said. "You know that. Under the stairs. Only your father and I and Adam know the combination." There it was. "Put him on the phone," I said. She went quiet. "He's out," she said finally. "You're not going to accuse your brother of something this serious, are you? He's had a hard enough time lately." My brain did that thing where it runs in 2 directions at once. One track was screaming, "There it is again, the automatic defense of him, the immediate doubt of me." The other track was whispering, "Maybe it isn't him. Maybe you're being paranoid. Maybe there's some other explanation." "Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "if you talk to him before I do, tell him I'm going to the police." That got a reaction. "Absolutely not," she snapped. "We handle family matters in the family. You do not drag your brother's name through the mud because of some clerical error." "He stole my identity," I said, my voice cracked. That was the first time I said it out loud. It felt both too big and too small for what was happening. "You don't know that," she insisted, but her voice had that brittle edge it gets when she's lying. I hung up. The next 3 months were a blur of paperwork and phone calls and shame. God, the shame. It makes no sense. You're the victim, and yet you feel like you're the one who did something wrong. I filed a police report. I called every company on my credit report and told my story so many times I could recite it in my sleep. I sent copies of my driver's license, my lease, my pay stubs. I got a crash course in how thin the wall is between financially okay and ruined. Some companies were helpful. Some were suspicious, like I was trying to get out of paying my own debt. At least one basically said, "Sorry, we verified identity at the time, so it's on you." My credit score, which I'd watched like a hawk, tanked. I went from "maybe I'll buy a condo in a few years" to "you'd be lucky to get approved for a prepaid phone." Through it all, Adam avoided me. No calls. No texts. He ghosted me like a bad Tinder date. When I showed up at my parents' house one Sunday, exhausted and desperate, they met me at the door. "This isn't a good time," Dad said, filling the doorway with his body. "I don't care if it's a good time," I snapped. I barely recognize my own voice. Either he talks to me or I file a civil suit. That word, suit, must have hit something because Adam appeared behind Dad, hands in his pockets, expression infuriatingly casual. He said, like I just dropped by for coffee. He didn't even deny it at first. That's what still blows my mind. We walked to the end of the driveway, the sun too bright, reflecting off the neighbor's car. I could smell someone's laundry detergent on the breeze. My heart was pounding so hard I felt it in my gums. You stole my identity, I said. You destroyed my credit. I can't even get a Target card. Why? He rolled his shoulders. I was going to pay it back, he said, which wasn't an answer. I just needed a little help getting started. Help? I almost laughed. Help is asking. Help is a loan we both sign. Help is not pretending to be me and taking out $15,000 in my name. He got that look he always gets when backed into a corner, eyes flashing, chin jutting out. You've always had it easier, he snapped. You got the scholarships, you got the job, you got out. I'm still stuck here. I'm just balancing things out. I worked for everything I have, I said. My hands were shaking. I studied my ass off. I took night shifts. You had the same parents, the same house, the same opportunities. Yeah, but they're proud of you, he said. They look at me and see a failure. You don't get it. So your solution was to make my life harder? I asked. It came out in a whisper. He shrugged. Actually shrugged. You're good with money. You'll figure it out. I remember staring at him and realizing two things at the same time. He genuinely didn't see himself as a villain, and he genuinely didn't see me as a person separate from him. I was a resource, a safety net, a set of numbers he could plug into a form. I wish I could say I cut him off that day and never looked back. I didn't. I yelled. I cried. I told him he was going to fix it. He promised he would. He didn't. My parents begged me not to ruin his life. They called what he did a mistake. The police report went nowhere. Surprise. When the suspect is your brother and your parents refuse to cooperate, it becomes a family dispute. The companies put notes on my file, but the debt was still there. The best I could do was freeze my credit so it couldn't get worse. For a while, the anger ate me alive. I was furious at Adam and my parents, at myself for not seeing it coming. I fantasized about dramatic confrontations, about exposing him at Thanksgiving, about showing up at one of his buddies' houses and reading out his list of crimes. I wanted him to hurt, but rage is exhausting. After a few months, all I had left was this numb, heavy thing sitting in my chest. I went to therapy. I worked my shifts. I cooked cheap meals and chipped away at the damage as best I could. I documented everything: emails, statements, texts. I kept a binder because that's who I am. The revenge didn't start as revenge. Not exactly. It started as self-defense. A friend of mine, Jess, works in compliance at a bank. Over drinks one night, I told her the whole miserable saga. She listened, eyes wide, then asked a question no one else had asked me. What does he have on paper? What do you mean? I mean, if he's been pretending to be you, where has he used his actual info? She said. Stupid people are lazy. They reuse email addresses. They forget to hide their IP. They put their real phone number as a backup contact. If he did this himself, there's a trail. A small, cold spark lit up in my brain. I went home and went through every application I'd requested copies of. Some are almost perfect, fake emails, burner phone numbers. But some weren't. There was one car loan where the alt contact number ended in the same 4 digits Adam has had since high school. There was a furniture store account with an email that was basically his name plus a number. A payday loan application listed his real address with my name on it. I brought everything to a consumer rights lawyer a week later. His office smelled like old paper and mint gum. He skimmed through my binder, eyebrows lifting. You have more documentation than half my clients, he said. And yes, this is textbook identity theft. Can we do anything? I asked, sounding younger than I liked. He leaned back. Criminally? That's up to the DEA, and family cases are messy. Civilly? Sure. You could sue him for damages. You could include your parents if you can prove they obstructed anything, but that's a steep hill. The question is, what do you actually want? That question sat with me for weeks. What did I want? Money back, obviously. My credit repaired. An apology that didn't sound like a PR statement written by my mom. But beyond that, I realized that what I wanted more than anything was for him to feel the consequences of his own actions, to be seen for who he was without me cushioning his fall. That's when the idea of the long game started to take shape. Year one was about information. I kept everything. Every text Adam accidentally sent me bragging about some new business opportunity. Every photo Mom posted on Facebook of him in front of a new truck I knew was bought with stolen money. Every bill collection notice that came to my apartment with an account I didn't recognize. I put fraud alerts on my credit, locked everything down, and slowly, painstakingly argued my way out of as many debts as I could by proving they weren't mine. I also stopped talking to him directly. If he wanted to communicate, it had to be in writing, so I had a record. Our last phone call ended with him yelling, "Why are you being so dramatic?" I said I'd fix it, and me saying, "Put it in an email." He never did. Year two was about separation. I saved aggressively, cut expenses to the bone, and eventually got a secured credit card. One of those where you put down a deposit equal to your limit. It was humiliating going from prime offers in the mail to being grateful for a $300 card. But it was mine. I paid every bill on time. I watched my credit score inch up from abysmal to merely bad. Meanwhile, Adam was living like nothing had happened. Or maybe like something had happened, and he'd decided the best response was to double down. He posted photos with bottle service at clubs, trips to Vegas, flashy shoes. Mom would call and say, "He's finally got a good job. Sales. He's really turning things around." Using whose name? I'd ask. She'd huff and say I was being bitter. I might have let it go. Life was slowly getting less horrible. The debt collectors called less frequently. I made new friends at work who didn't know me as the one whose brother screwed her over. Then my landlord announced he was selling the building. If we wanted to stay, we'd have to apply through the new management company. "They'll have to run a credit check," he said apologetically. I went home and sat on my floor, surrounded by my binders, and cried until my face hurt. I'd spent 2 years trying to claw my way out of the hole Adam shoved me into, and I still might lose my home because of him. That night, something in me hardened. I was done letting him mess up my life from a distance, while I played the reasonable one. Year 3 became about consequences. I went back to my lawyer. We updated everything. My now improved but still damaged credit, my landlord's letter about the pending checks, new debts I'd been able to prove weren't mine. We filed a civil suit for damages against Adam. Not a dramatic movie style, "I sue you for millions" thing. Just a quiet, boring stack of paperwork that said, "You did this, here's proof, here's what you owe." I didn't tell my parents. I knew they'd try to talk me out of it, guilt trip me, maybe even warn him so he could scramble. I let the papers get served while he was at work. He texted me that night. "WTF? Is this M?" I didn't answer. A week later, Mom called screaming. "How could you do this to your brother?" she demanded. "He could lose his job. He could have not committed fraud," I said. My voice sounded calm in a way that scared even me. "It's just money," she said. "Family is more important than money." Then why was my financial stability less important than protecting him? I asked. She hung up. The suit was the first part. The second part, the one we're in the middle of as I sit in this chilly conference room, came courtesy of Jess. Her bank had a new fraud initiative. They were investigating patterns in identity theft, focusing on people who repeatedly used relatives' information. When I told her about the civil suit, she raised an eyebrow. She said, "If he's still using your details anywhere in our system, that's interesting to our fraud department." I thought the criminal side was a dead end, I said. "Sometimes it is," she shrugged. "But sometimes people are dumb enough to keep doing the same fraud in the same places. And when that happens, we get very interested, especially if we have a cooperative victim with excellent documentation." She smiled. "Which you are. So here we are." The bank flagged several accounts opened in my name that I hadn't even seen yet. They also flagged accounts opened in his own name that clearly traced back to the same devices, addresses, patterns. Their fraud investigator, a woman named MS Patel, who looks like she takes zero nonsense from anyone, requested a joint meeting. I requested that my lawyer be present. Now, Ms. Patel is sliding copies of applications across the table, her nails clicking softly on the paper. We've confirmed with Ms. Carter that she did not authorize these, she says. We have IP logs, timestamps, and, in several of these, your email address or phone number listed as secondary contact. Adam's face is pale and shiny. He keeps running his hand over his jaw like he's checking it's still there. This is a misunderstanding, he says. We're twins. We share everything. She probably just forgot. I let out a small, involuntary laugh. Everyone looks at me. Sorry. I say, not sorry at all. I definitely remember whether I bought a 2019 Dodge Charger. My lawyer clears his throat. As you can see, we've already initiated a civil claim, he says. My client is here today voluntarily, but she reserves the right to pursue further action. This is ridiculous, Adam snaps. He turns to me, slipping into the old charm. Come on, Em. We're family. Mom and Dad would lose it if they saw this. There it is, the old lever, the implied threat of parental disapproval. 3 years ago, that would have worked. I would have backed down, told myself I was being too harsh, that he was still my brother. Now I just feel tired. And strangely, finally, like I'm on solid ground. I gave you 3 years, I say. My voice is soft, but it carries in the small room. 3 years to make it right. You chose not to. I look at Ms. Patel. What happens next? She folds her hands. From the bank side, we'll be closing any accounts that were fraudulently opened and flagging his profile, she says. We'll also be submitting a report to the authorities with our findings. What happens criminally will be up to them. Adam's eyes widen. You're going to let them arrest me? He asks, like I personally order the handcuffs. I'm going to let you deal with the consequences of your own actions, I say. There's a long silence. You can almost hear the tectonic plates of our family shifting. Later, after the meeting, my phone explodes with texts from my parents. Some are begging. Some are angry. Some are weirdly practical, like, can't you at least withdraw the suit now that the bank is involved? I sit on my couch, the cheap gray one I bought secondhand, and stare at the messages. My binder is on the coffee table in front of me, tabbed and highlighted like a study guide for a class I never wanted to take. I type back, slowly. I didn't do this to him. He did this to himself. I'm done protecting him from the truth. I hit send before I can overthink it. So here I am, on a throwaway account, trying to make sense of how I ended up planning a 3-year revenge without realizing that's what it was. It doesn't feel like the dramatic movie scene I used to imagine, where I slam down evidence at a family dinner and everyone gasps and turns on him. It feels quieter than that. Sadder. He'll probably lose his job. He might get charged. My civil suit might end up with a judge ordering him to pay restitution he'll never fully manage. My parents might never forgive me. But here's the thing I keep coming back to. For 3 years, every time I filled out a form and had to explain why my credit was destroyed, I felt like I was confessing a crime I didn't commit. Every time I thought about buying a car, or moving, or even just opening a new phone plan, I saw his face laughing and saying, "You're good with money, you'll figure it out." Today, in that conference room, while he fumbled and blustered and tried to charm his way out of what he'd done, I realized that I wasn't the one on trial anymore. He was. Finally. I don't know what our relationship will look like in 5 years. Maybe there won't be one. Maybe he'll get clean, get therapy, someday apologize in a way that isn't just about making his own life easier. Maybe I'll forgive him. Maybe I won't. What I do know is that I'm not going to keep setting myself on fire to keep him warm. If that makes me petty or vindictive or a bad sister in my parents' eyes, so be it. He stole my name, my credit, and 3 years of my life. I took my name back. The rest of it, he can explain to the bank, the court, and whoever else he tries to charm next.